Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker for today, His Grace Brahma-TIRTHA Prabhu. And all glories to the assembled Vaishnavi devotees. We thank you all as always. Prabhuji, it's always an honor to have your association. The dose of Srimad Bhagavatam is so good, so strong that even once in a month kind of sustains us for the whole month till we meet again. Thank you so much. And the words we thank you all. So, Prabhuji, we may put the verse on the screen and you take it over from here.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, I greet you all, and I see some old friends. I see my friend Gould there. Nice to see you. And Dave, always happy to see your smiling face as you're in your extensive library. Let me make sure I got the right verse today. 3:16:18, I got it right.
Yes.
So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tavatas Sanatano Dharmo Rakshayate Tunibistava Dharmasya Panamo Guyo Nirvikaro Bhavan Mata. And you are the source of the eternal occupation of all living entities. Now, in here, the four Kumaras are speaking to the Lord, and they got in a little bit of trouble. Well, they didn't get in trouble. Vijay, the gatekeepers, got in trouble. And of course, this was a pastime. Just like when the Lord wants his back scratched, he became a tortoise, so that when the demigods and the demons were churning the ocean of milk, they put a pivot, and that pivot point was on his shell, so that's how he scratched his back. So for me to scratch my back, I have to get a back scratcher or somebody to come along. But the Lord, he does it in more clever ways. And when he has an itch, it's a really royal itch. It's not like our little itches. So in a similar way, the Lord here is doing a pastime for our benefit. You're the source of all of the eternal occupation of all living entities. The eternal occupation is obviously devotional service. And by your multi-manifestations of personalities of Godhead, you have always protected religion. You're the supreme objective of religious principles. And in our opinion, you are inexhaustible and unchangeable eternally. So we'll unpack some of this in the purport. The statement in this verse, Dharmasya Panama Guya, refers to the most confidential part of all religious literature. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Chaitanya says, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam. This is the most king of all knowledge and the most secret of all knowledge. It's often asked, well, if the Gita has 500 translations in English, let alone other languages, and you can get it online, you can get it on your cell phone, you can get it in any library. Many great people have read the Gita. Thoreau used to say, I bathe my intellect daily in the Gita. Einstein referred to the Gita when the first atomic bomb blast went off. What was his name? Oppenheimer quoted the verse from the Gita of the universal form. And so the Gita is so well known. How is the Gita a secret? How is it confidential? That's a key question. I mean, if I said to you, I have a secret And, it's a special secret. I'm going to tell you the combination. I'm going to give you my PIN code to my ATM card. It's a big secret. And I posted on the internet. What kind of secret is that? Now you know my PIN code. And I assure you it's not 108. Anyway, somebody's going to say, well, how is this a secret? I mean, come on, I could just read it. So that is a really interesting point. It's a secret because, as Krishna says in the Gita, you can only understand me by devotional service. So though it's in front of you, you can't understand it. And Krishna directly says in the Gita, when I appear on earth, fools, he used the word fools, treat me as an ordinary human being. They can't see who I am. So it's a secret, but not a secret. It's a secret in that you can only know this by a process, but it's also there for everyone. And as Krishna describes, Prabhupada used this famous example. It rains. Now, when it rains on the plants, there's a huge benefit. Plants will grow. When it rains on the rocks, there's not much benefit. The water goes off. When it rains in the ocean, who knows the difference? So billions of gallons of water and a few more drops, who cares? So in a similar way, the knowledge is there, but like the plants that use the rain, only by devotional service will we break this guyam, this confidentiality, and actually see our relationship. So it's confidential, but right there. And Krishna's neutral to everyone. As Krishna says in the Gita, I'm available to everyone. And as devotees, we try to have equal vision, sama darshana, seeing the Brahmin, the dog, and the lowest of mankind, the dog eater. When the British ruled Hong Kong up until 1999, when it came time for the Chinese New Year, the British residents would hardly even walk their dog outside because it was a delicacy at Chinese New Year to eat dogs. And their dogs were kidnapped left and right during the Chinese New Year. So they wouldn't walk their dogs. So when we say dog eater, there are dog eaters. Definitely dog eaters out there. So Krishna says, but we're seeing the dog and the dog eater equally. That is a special vision reserved for the devotees. So the conclusion of Krishna in his advice to Arjuna is sarva dharman prityaja, give up all other religious engagements and surrender unto me. Now, curiously, after Krishna says that, he tells Arjuna, by the way, I've taught this all to you, now do as you like. Sometimes we think that there are piles of should everywhere, but love requires free will, and free will requires that we can make choices. So Krishna does something very rare in any religious literature. Doesn't say, oh, these are the 10 commandments. You do this, or I spite you or smite you. A lot of smiting in the Old Testament. He doesn't say that. He says, I've explained it to you, now do as you like. You make your own decision, because no love without free will. So this is not twisting arms. So this is the most confidential knowledge in executing religious principles. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that if one does not become Krishna conscious after very rigidly executing one's religious duties, all his labor in following so-called religious principles is a waste of time. Waste of time. So let's say that's a very challenging statement. Let's say I am a practicing Catholic and I go to Mass all the time, but if we don't become God conscious, then it's just rituals. We do many things by rote. Um, when we're driving, how many people are paying attention? We're just thinking of something else, listening to the radio, whatever. We do so many things by rote. Here it's saying don't do religious principles just by rote. It's not saying to violate religious principles, but saying religious principles alone, if it doesn't change your heart, what good is it? So we have tests we give ourselves. Is our heart actually changing by what we're doing? We can test it. I mean, when we have a breakfast, we know if we're full or not. No one needs to tell us if we're full for a normal person. There's a disease called Prader-Willi syndrome, and it's a genetic defect. I know one devotee child has it, and he can never stop eating. So in his house, the refrigerator, cabinets, everything has to have locks on it because he can never stop eating. So they have to prevent him from turning into a balloon. And it also it does other impairments of the brain, and it's a kind of a nasty genetic defect. And um, so, but for the rest of us, for those of us who are normal, when we're done eating, we know it. When we're full, we're satisfied. In the early days of the movement, one time it was a big debate. How many chapatis should we eat? Because some devotees were thinking, oh, Kirtananda Swami was in charge of New Vrindavan then. Oh, you should only have 2 chapatis. Otherwise, you'll become a glutton. And then other devotees, young, they're working very hard. They were quite unsatisfied by that. They wanted more. So they went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, how many chapatis are we allowed to eat? And Kirtananda says only 2. And Prabhupada gave the most brilliant answer. Kirtananda, he can only have 2 chapatis. You can eat all you want. And that was the perfect answer. Because, we say one man's food's another man's poison. So we all don't have the same diets and the same desires. One devotee, he went to India in 1973, American devotee, very nice devotee, I won't mention name, highly educated. He went to India for 3-4 months, came back to the New York temple. He's a New Yorker, American, came back with a heavy Bengali accent. Why a heavy Bengali accent? Well, that's how Prabhupada spoke. And if Prabhupada spoke with a heavy Bengali accent, we should all speak with a Bengali accent. That's called imitating, not following in the footsteps. That's called imitating. Again, nice devotee. He's probably 23 years old and a little immature, and he got over that. But the point is, it's not a matter of imitating. It's a matter of changing the heart so we can continue with the purport. Here also the sages confirm the statement that Supreme Lord, not the demigods, is the ultimate goal of all religious principles. There are many foolish propagandists say that worship of the demigods is a way to reach the supreme goal. But in the authorized statement of Bhagavatam and Gita, that is, I emphasize, not accepted. Now, that doesn't mean we disrespect demigods. I went to one devotee from Krishna House. I was visiting his mother in New Delhi, Indian family, and she showed me her altar. A pious lady, but bewildered. So she showed me her altar. On Monday, I worship Ganesh. On Tuesday, Shiva. On Wednesday, Rama. On Thursday, Krishna. Friday, I forgot who. She got it all. She wasn't taking any chances whatsoever. We got them all covered. We're not going to miss anybody. Now, she just didn't really understand who the Supreme Person is. At the same time, we'll never disrespect the demigods. just like, well, I won't use the American example because it's very hard to respect our particular leaders at the moment. But let's say there's a leader of a country who we're respecting. I remember when John Kennedy was president before he was assassinated, everyone loved him. He was probably one of the most beloved presidents America ever had. His famous statement, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It really captured everyone's heart. And so people respected him. And then he had his ministers, his cabinet members. So if his cabinet people would show up, and one of them was actually his brother, Robert Kennedy Sr., who would probably turn over his grave if he knew what his son was doing, but that's a different matter. Robert Kennedy Sr., he became the Attorney General. And then there were other cabinet members, and they're all generally very respectable, honest people. And if a cabinet member would show up, we would certainly respect them, offer them as a representative of the president, all respect, but we understood they are not the president. They're the representative. An example is given in Indian history. In 1857, there was a Sepoy mutiny. Does anybody know the story of the Sepoy mutiny? Anybody know the story? I know Ghoul will know the story, but I'll tell you the story. The Sepoy mutiny and how it relates to this verse. There was the East India Company, a private company, ruled large swaths of India with their headquarters first in Calcutta, then later on in Lucknow. It was a trading company with its own army. And there was still a Mughal emperor in Delhi whose kingdom had shrank quite a bit. And then there were many Rajputs, these kings, little kingdoms all over India. And the army of East India Company, all the officers were white, and all the soldiers were Hindu or Muslim, maybe a few Christians. So they introduced around 1857 a new rifle. And you had to load these are not like modern weapons, closer to muskets. So you had to load the shell in it, each shell individually. And they greased the shell. And the word spread among the soldiers, it was greased with pig fat and cow fat. Now, the pig fat offended the Muslims, and the cow fat offended the Hindus. So all these sepoys, they call it, the enlisted men, not the officer corps, which was entirely British, rebelled. And they rebelled against the British. And remember, the enlisted men way outnumber the officers. And it looked like they were going to drive the British out. And there was one, I think, Captain or Colonel Hopkins. He knew all the indigenous languages. And Hopkins led the British response to the rebellion. And because he was very good at divide and conquer, he got some of the Rajput kings to join his side against the rebellion. And eventually he put down the rebellion. And I know the story intimately because his great nephew toured India with me, a professor from the university. And he put down the rebellion and defeated the last troop at the Martinique school in Lucknow. The last rebels were defeated. And after that, the British, then when he was in Delhi, he captured the last Mughal emperor. But the emperor was so stoned on opium, he didn't know he had been captured. And he just sent off to exile in Burma. Then he captured the last monarchs, the two children of the emperor. and he was marching to New Delhi with them, to Delhi Gate from, this was uh, Humayun's temple, I believe, or fort, I forgot which it's called. And he captured the emperor and captured his two sons. And first he captured the emperor, who was sent to Burma for an exile. Then he captured the two sons. He's marching to Delhi. Only 24 soldiers and thousands of followers of the Mughal emperor surrounded him. So what would you do if you have thousands of people surrounding you? You have 24 soldiers, and with you are the last Mughal successors to the crown. So what could he do? He had to think fast. So he stripped them naked, because if a Mughal emperor was seen naked in public, he kind of lost his power. And the crowd kept coming. So what did he do next? He shot them. And some considered him, they were young, I mean, not kids, I'm guessing in the 20s. I don't quite recall. Some considered that horrible, some considered it brilliant. And after he shot them, the crowd dispersed. There was no Mughal successor, and the British declared India as a crown colony. And that's how it began. Then now Queen Victoria becomes the Empress of India. But she never visited India. Why didn't she visit India? Can someone tell me? Queen Victoria, who was the Empress of India, was one of her titles, never visited India. Can anybody tell me why? Anybody want to take a guess?
Uh, I am thinking maybe she was ashamed of herself, what happened during the war.
Unfortunately, not. She was proud of it. It's a good thing. She should have been ashamed, Dave. You got that right. But she
Yeah.
was proud. The
Oh,
reason, I'll tell you the reason, because all of her ministers said, if you go to India, they'll assassinate you.
hmm.
So she wouldn't go to India. She wanted to go. And she had an Indian, uh, her husband, Prince Albert, had died, and her confidant became one of her Indian servants. She became very close to.
Hmm.
So she had a great affinity to India, really liked India, and was technically the Empress of India at the time. But didn't her advisor said, if you go, we can't actually guarantee your safety. So what did she do instead? She sent her ministers, the viceroy. Now the viceroy is not the queen, but the viceroy is offered the same respect as the queen, but is not the queen. That's the point. So similarly, the demigods, I tell this long-winded story to get to the point in the purport. The demigods are not God, but we respect them. We don't disrespect the demigods. We just understand they are not God. And those here who mistake the demigods as God and give up their real devotional service are completely lost. That does not mean, I want to repeat, that we disrespect. No, we respect even the dog eater, let alone a demigod. But that's a very important point being made here. So I told a long-winded story about it to give you a little bit of history, a little excitement here. I actually toured with the great-great-grandson of this, I think it was Captain Hopkins, and I actually toured the places where he captured the children of the emperor, where he captured the emperor, where he assassinated them. That's actually Delhi Gate in Delhi. Then we went to Lucknow, where he actually died. There was the last rebels were held up in a building on a school property. And when he got there, his sergeant said, the last rebels are here. We're going to roll a barrel of TNT, gunpowder in there, and it's finished. He said, "No, I want to be part of this battle." The sergeant said, "No, we just roll this barrel in. The war's over. This is the last rebel." He said, "No, I want to do it." Raises his sword, gallops with his horse, and stupidly gets shot in the stomach and dies. We actually found his grave, to my utter surprise. So that's called bravery in the mode of ignorance. Not very intelligent. So that's a little of the British history. That was 1857, and it was 90 years later, roughly, before India became an independent country. And before that, India was not a country, it was a series of kingdoms, with the North India, the Mughal emperor, being in charge of large swaths of India. But by 1857, his area of control had shrunk quite a bit. Okay, so I'm trying to here talk about the demigods. So here also the sages confirm that the Supreme Lord, not the demigods, is the ultimate goal of religious principles. There are many foolish propagandists who say that worship demigods is also a way to reach the supreme goal. But the authorized, keyword is authorized, statement of Bhagavatam and Gita, this is not accepted. Bhagavad Gita says that one who worships a particular demigod can reach that demigod's planet. But one who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead can enter into Vaikuntha. Some propagandists say that regardless of what one does, he will ultimately reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There was one famous Indian yogi who said all roads lead to the same place. But any of you who have been on a highway realize that that's not true. All roads don't take you to the same place. The Lord is eternal, the Lord's servitor is eternal, and the Lord's boat is eternal. They are all described here as sanatana, or eternal. The results of devotional service, therefore, is not temporary, as is the achievement of heavenly planets by worshiping the demigod. The sages want to stress that although the Lord, out of his cause, mercy, says that he worships the Brahmins and Vaishnavas, actually the Lord is worshipable not only by the Brahmins and Vaishnavas, but also by the demigods. So yesterday, there was a wonderful class by Hridayanath Maharaj. I sat in on it. And he discussed extensively this falling from the spiritual world. Though Prabhupada named his magazine Back to Godhead, kept talking about it, there's a segment of Vaishnavas who contend that you can never fall from the spiritual world. And there's a purport in which Prabhupada says you don't fall, but the context of that particular story is talking about you can't fall from the spiritual world because without some cause. If you're a pure devotee, you are not going to fall from the spiritual world. If you get a little curious, I wonder what this Mahat-tattva is like, Krishna will give you a chance to exit, only once. And then you put up with Adhyatmic, Adhibautic, Adhidaivic, miseries from others, miseries from nature, and what I leave out, miseries from disease, from the body. You put up with all these difficulties. And you put up these difficulties for a purpose, to purify us. Now, let us say I take a child. And those of you who have children have been through this experience. Your child is terribly misbehaving. Maybe your child's 3 years old, terribly misbehaving, pulling his sibling's hair and doing all kinds of mischief. What do we typically do? We say, time out, go in the corner. you must go in the corner for 10 minutes. Now, when that happened to me as a child, my response would be, because a child's mind is very active, very passionate, they really want to do something, and they get bored very, very easily. If I would be put in the corner for 10 minutes, I would consider that a punishment forever. I'd say, you can't put me there forever. Only 10 minutes. No, it's forever. It's forever. It feels that way. Similarly, our sojourn in the material world is just the briefest of moments, just feels like a long time. But compared to the cosmic situation, it's just the briefest of moments. Therefore, whatever difficulties we have are one, for our benefit, two, are fleeting. Sometimes we wonder, like, why would Vijay and Jai be sent to the material world? Well, that's described in this chapter. It's a pastime of the Lord. Sometimes we wonder for ourselves, why do I have suffering? Why does somebody else have to suffer? Question of theodicy. If God is really good, why is there so much evil in the world? I've been listening to a series of lectures by my favorite scholar of early Christianity by the name of Bert Ehrman, a brilliant scholar. So Bert Ehrman, I've shared some of his story before. He was brought up an evangelistic Christian, went to Moody Bible College, which is a very extremely conservative Bible college. Everything in the Bible is a literal word of God. If it makes sense or not, that's too bad. It's a literal word of God. And then he went to Princeton Theological Seminary, one of the best in America. And there he started wondering, wait, there's contradictions. In Mark, Matthew, and Luke, it describes Christ dying under these circumstances. And in John, it's so different. The virgin birth was not mentioned in hardly any of the Gospels, only two of the Gospels. It's such a big deal, a virgin birth. How is it not mentioned? There was a reason for the virgin birth. He discovered why that would have been inserted. Did Christ really die on the cross and resurrect, or was, because normally crucifixion takes 3 days to die, but he was taken off the cross in 1 day. What really happened? So he studies these things academically, very thoroughly. I'm not a Christian scholar. I can't speak to the veracity of what he says, but it gives me a lot of interesting context, and it shows how Christianity was radically changed by the Council of Nicene. They came up with a Trinity, which was not in the original teachings. They came up with many things that were not in the parent original teachings of Christ. But he became an agnostic, this professor. And he talks about why he became an agnostic, because he couldn't answer one question. One question kept him, because he really wants to believe in God and have faith and understand the Supreme Person. But one question he could not answer, and it drove him to agnosticism. Can anybody guess what that question was? Theological question. Anybody want to guess? A very pressing theological question. He looked around, I'll give you a hint. He looked around the earth, saw something, and he said, how could there be a God? Anybody want to guess? What was he thinking that made him an atheist? It's very relevant for this verse.
I would say how was it possible that a virgin gave birth to a child?
Well, that one, he said, really, it's not in all the Gospels. So we think that was added for a reason. That's a good guess, though. Somebody got it right in the chat. Why do good things happen to bad people, or bad things happen to good people? Why does that happen? Why is there so much suffering in the world? The question of theodicy. How can there be evil in the world if God is all good and omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent, the triple O God? He's omniscient, he knows everything. He's everywhere, he's omnipresent, he's omnipotent, he can do everything. How can there be so much suffering in the world? Animals eat animals, people kill people. And he looked at the suffering and he couldn't figure it out. And Nanda gave the right answer because he didn't understand reincarnation. I'll give a simple example. I've been to prisons to visit various prisoners at times, and sometimes you're in prison. I've had this experience. I'll point out so and so, he's the librarian. He has glasses, looks like my grandfather, nice gentleman, and he's wheeling a cart of books around to give library books out. And I'll say, wow, how did such a person end up in prison? Such a nice, gentle person. I'm watching him. Well, it turns out he's a serial killer. And by serial killer, I do not mean he's eating too many boxes of Cheerios. I meant he's a serial killer, killing too many people. Um, and 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 so when we see this happen, we don't we don't know the history, but there is a history. So whenever I see somebody terribly suffering, I know there's a history here. And for their own benefit, they're burning off certain karma. Their subtle body is being shaped not to do that sinful activity again. And when I see someone really enjoying too much, you get an Epstein kind of person, a horrible person who's, he's every day in the news, just basically a pedophile for young girls. And he had all his friends participating. Even Deepak Chopra has now been implicated, famous Deepak Chopra. And you have these horrible, but at one point he had his own jet plane, he had his private island, he had his apartments in Paris, New York, Miami, servants, basically living like a king. All the great leaders were coming to see him because he was very wealthy. Some came to see him because of the hanky panky. Um, and and uh, and when I saw him enjoying like that and knew a he had already been convicted one time of prostitution with a minor, but he got off with basically a slap on the wrist. When I saw that, I understood, oh, Epstein, he's burning up all his good karma. Now this will be very bad news for him because he's burning it up right now, enjoying, fame, fortune, uh, uh, sex, drugs, everything. And then I knew he's burning up his good karma. But in the past, he had earned some karma and got this, became one of the richest people. And of course, he ended up in jail and then either killed himself or was killed. No one quite knows what happened, other than he's dead. And now he's reborn again. But this next life will not likely be very auspicious. And anyone who touched him has now become contaminated. The largest conference in the world on the science of consciousness is held every other year in Arizona, and then every other year somewhere around the world. So last summer it was in Europe and Spain. We had 9 devotee speakers there, 800 people. It's a huge conference on the science of consciousness. So this year it's in Tucson in April. We have, again, 9 devotee speakers. I was going to be one of them this year. First time I would have spoken there. And we're chairing a panel. The most reputable parapsychology department in America at the University of Virginia was going to be on our panel. That we're running the panel. They're going to be our panelists. Every contact we would have wanted. It was a wonderful opportunity for us. And all of a sudden, I go to their webpage to check a date. It says conference canceled. Canceled? It's been going on for 34 years. 32 years. How do you cancel this? Turns out the guy who organized it took Epstein money and didn't tell anybody. Didn't even have sex. It was so toxic that it canceled the whole thing. So amazingly toxic. So you can imagine that people who associated with Epstein, they were living the high life on his private jet, enjoying his girls, enjoying his drugs. Now everyone's suffering so badly. That's the nature of karma. So this Professor Ehrman did not understand reincarnation at all. So he couldn't understand how there's suffering in the world and the suffering is ultimately for our benefit. He couldn't get that. So he became an agnostic. When he became agnostic, all his evangelistic friends started preaching to him. Oh, you just have a great misunderstanding. You don't understand how great God is and God's love. And they go on, trying to convince him he shouldn't be an agnostic. But they left out any philosophical justification for theodicy, why there's suffering in the world. Theodicy is the name of that study. And because they couldn't give him any explanation on that, because they didn't know reincarnation, and Nanda Priya, you sure got that one right. He missed it. So the idea here is that Bhakti-mam bhajan tate, Krishna says in Gita, only by devotional service can we know Krishna. So by devotional service, we can actually know Krishna. We respect the demigods, we respect living entities. We try to offer respect as widely as we can. The first class devotee offers respect to everyone under every circumstance. But Prabhupada described himself as a second class devotee. Anybody know why? Not necessarily out of humility. That's there too. But he described it to me personally. I was shocked to hear it as a second class devotee. Why is that?
So that he can see differences and be able to preach.
Exactly, Sahadev, exactly. Because if Prabhupada saw everyone as a devotee, then he couldn't organize anything. Everyone's already a devotee deep down. Just so you take a light bulb. Here, I have in my hand a light bulb. And if this light bulb is lit and I cover it with a layer of cloth, it gets dull. And if I put enough cloth, you can't even see the light anymore, but still a light bulb. So living entities who are covered in illusion are like that covered light bulb. They can't understand. We can't necessarily see the spiritual spark in them. It's so covered. But one who's on the first class platform can see that spiritual spark in everybody. Therefore, they're not very effective as a preacher because they can't act according to time, place, and circumstance. They see everyone as a servant of God, which ultimately is true. But for the sake of preaching, Prabhupada said I have to step down to the second class platform so I can make some distinctions. Otherwise, I can't do a presentation. So that's what's going on here. We have 10 minutes left. I always like leaving time for questions. I do have to stop promptly by the hour. So I want to see if there are questions, comments, criticisms, or any realizations you'd like to share. We'll begin with questions on the verse. If there are no questions on the verse, then we'll take questions on general topics. Anybody have anything they'd like to say?
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. I have a question. I'm not sure if it's on the text, but it is from the sharing when you were talking about some devotees contend that no living entity fell from the spiritual world. I believe this is, excuse me to say, a bone of contention that may never die in ISKCON. But there is a letter there are lots of references, but there is a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to one of his disciples, and he explains the situation just like how you explained it with us now. And I would like to share it here briefly.
Good.
Oh, no, sorry. I got it wrong here. Where is it? Okay, I got it. This is a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to Jagadish on February 27th, 1990. So it's quite a lengthy letter Srila Prabhupada wrote. But Jagadish Prabhu had asked Srila Prabhupada some series of questions, and Srila Prabhupada took his time to answer all the various questions. So Srila Prabhupada states here, regarding your questions concerning the spirit souls falling into Maya's influence, it is not that those who have developed a passive relationship with Krishna are more likely to fall into nascent activities. Usually, anyone who has developed his relationship with Krishna does not fall down in any circumstance.
Yeah,
But,
usually.
yes.
It says usually anyone who's developed does not fall down, but
yes,
because we have free will, we can.
Yes.
It's a paradox. It's called a paradox, an apparent contradiction that when you dig deeper makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a paradox.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we are not originally from the spiritual world, which means that we are not originally bhakti yogis. And so if we are not originally bhakti yogis and someone is not willing to practice bhakti, what is the worry? What is the concern? But we show concern because we know that originally we are bhakti yogis, and somehow we are not practicing because of the influence of Maya, so we're trying to revive it. That's my understanding.
I mean, originally, Prabhupada says back to Godhead. In the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, in the story of King Prachanabarishat, the Lord says, "Do you remember me? You have forgotten me." So the point Prabhupada made over and over, we were with Krishna and we became illusioned. And love means nothing without free will. So we have free will. I mean, for example, any of you can click and shut off your Zoom right now and go back to eating your pizza. Anyone can do that. You have the free will. So if we don't have free will, there's no love. And that's the key. Now, the Mayavadis, those who are more impersonally inclined, they don't care very much about love. And they really don't care very much about free will. There's a new book out by a famous philosopher, I think his name is Polanski. And the name of the book is something like, "There's no such thing as free will." My question is, how did you write the book? How did you do that? And he gives all these arguments why free will doesn't exist. And if free will doesn't exist, why do we have prisons? Why do we do it? Makes no sense. But he tries to make a point because free will means responsibility. If we have free will, then we have responsibility. And the Bhagavatam begins with the famous verse from the Vedanta Sutta, Tato Brahma Jijnasi. Now is the time to inquire. It's to be your full potential as a human being. We have to inquire, why are we here? Why is there suffering? What can we do about it? How to get out of it? this was very much also the message of the Buddha, that they're suffering. What are we going to do about it? Now, when the Buddha was asked for details about God and everything, some consider the Buddha to be very atheistic. Of course, we know the Buddha is one of the Das avatars, actually an incarnation of Vishnu. But when asked, the Buddha says, you're like a man who's been shot with an arrow, and I'm the doctor that comes along. And I said, I'll extract that arrow from you so you can live. And the patient goes, wait, before you extract the arrow, I want to know who shot me, what village is he from, what caste is he from. I want to know all this information. No, I'm here to get the arrow out, you idiot. That's for later. So when the Buddha was asked about these things, because in the name of the Vedas, there was so much meat eating going on, the Buddha said, wait, let's just clear out some garbage first, then we'll get to these things. He didn't deny it. The second sermon of the Buddha is traditionally labeled in all books on Buddhism, is labeled something like, there is no soul. Except it never says that in the sermon once. It just doesn't say it. That's just how it's been popularized. The Buddha, who is in incarnation, who we highly respect. And we don't know a lot about what the Buddha said. His writings were not canonized until maybe a century after he passed on. And the only person who was there to actually a witness of the Buddha to repeat, what is it we learned from the Buddha? What did he really say? Was his barber, who was with him a lot of the time. And so we have the testimony of a barber that was canonized, decades after the Buddha left. So there's some confusion of what the Buddha actually said, but his teachings generally are spot on and basically how to avoid suffering. But he doesn't say there is no soul. Never says that. That's just a sadly popular misconception. And like I said, he's one of the Das avatars. So we respect the Buddha, even more than demigods, we respect him as one of the avatars.
Avatar.
But there's a lot of misconstruing what he actually said. Then you have the story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where the Buddhists came to Lord Chaitanya and he gave them a hard time. But he didn't give them a hard time because they were Buddhists. He gave them a hard time because of the philosophical position they were taking in the name of Buddhism. And that's an important distinction. So some devotees become almost anti-Buddhist because of that incident. But we have to read that incident very carefully. Yeah. I was in India and I was in Bodh Gaya where the Buddha received enlightenment. I wasn't even a devotee. I was just visiting the place. And there's a tree. And I say that's a sapling of the original tree the Buddha sat under when he got enlightened. So I sat under the tree. Obviously, nothing happened, but I had to try it anyway. Who knows?
No, something happened.
I had to give it. Hey, come on! I had to give it a try. What can you do? Okay, Sriman Varahacharya.
Right, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Good to hear from you again. My question is about demigod worship. It's a lot that's been said about demigods. And I want you to place this properly for me, because we know that surely we are supposed to worship the Supreme God. But then the Supreme God in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 11, that verse, Deva, I don't know, 11. Devam Bhavaya Tananya, Te Deva Bhavaya Duva, Parasparam Bhavaya Dasya Paramabhasasa. The demigods, oh no, it's 11. No, it's Istamboga, right? 11. Yeah, so that verse, Krishna is saying that that by cooperation between the demigods and men, prosperity will reign for all. Maybe you can show us that verse. I think it's 3:11. I think 3:11. So I just want you to place that in order, because even though we tell people that demigod worship is not the best, but Krishna did recommend that cooperation between men and demigods will make prosperity to reign for all. So if demigods worship use that as an argument, what do we say? That's my question.
I'm looking at the chapter in the context. And the way I understand it is this. Let me see, I'm going to go to the prior verse, which I think will be helpful. In the beginning, the Lord sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices. Be thou happy by this sacrifice, because it will bestow upon you everything. So the Lord, everything comes from God, is the first point. And then the next point is the demigods being pleased by sacrifices will please you, and thus by cooperation, men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So it's saying if you don't cooperate with the demigods, you're not going to have prosperity. That's true. It doesn't say if you worship the demigods, you'll achieve devotional service. It's not saying that at all. It's saying be respectful. I live in the city. Now, the power company where I live is owned by the city. Now, if I am very nasty to the power company, they could even cut off my power. So why would I be nasty to the power company? But the power company is not the supreme. They're just the intermediary. They run the power company. That's what they do. Somebody has to run the power company. Most of you could never name the person who runs your power company, but you know there's a person behind it. Similarly, we know there are demigods behind it. We might not know who or anything about them, but we know that there's some personalities behind it. Wherever you see intelligence, there's personality. If you look at a painting on the wall, you don't say, oh, this is this kind of ink and that kind of ink. You say, oh, it's a painting of the Mona Lisa or painting of Krishna. You see the painting, and as soon as you see a painting, you know there's an artist behind it. So similarly, we know there's intelligence behind everything. So the demigods are the sub-agents, and then you have the God. So if you want prosperity, you're going to be sacrificing demigods. Later on, Krishna says those who worship the demigods are not real bright. So how to balance these? We should be respectful to the demigods, respectful to everyone. That's a Vaishnava gentleman or lady, but our real worship is for the Supreme Person, and that's what Krishna says over and over in the Gita. But that's a nice question you asked, Raha. That's a good question. Are there any final questions? Because I'm supposed to be at another program momentarily.
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. Of course, as always, I would like to share a statement from Srila Prabhupada, which might help to answer this question.
Thank you, Sahadev.
Srila Prabhupada says in Canto 4, chapter 24, text 7, that 24, 27, no, let me see. Yeah, 24, 27. No, I got it wrong. 24, 27. Okay, yeah. So Lord Shiva said, you are all the sons of King Prachinabhari, and I wish all good fortune to you. I also know what you're going to do, and therefore I'm visible to you just to show my mercy upon you. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada states that demigod, it says here, the demigods are servants. The demigods are servants of the Lord. I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, the demigods have a duty, just like the viceroy in India. If the viceroy is acting independently, they get removed. That happened. Indra decided to attack Krishna. Lord Brahma stole the cows and the cowherd boys.
Oh, I find it here.
Okay.
It says, simply by worshiping the Supreme Lord, a devotee can please all of them. All of them here refers to the demigods. So it does not mean that cooperation means we worship them. Nor does he have to ask the demigods for material benedictions. For the demigods, being pleased with the devotee automatically offer him everything that he needs. The demigods are servants of the Lord, and they are always prepared to help a devotee in all circumstances. So that is my understanding.
Very, very key point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a key point. The demigods are our friends, they're not our enemies. I've seen sometimes Vaishnavas get distracted into extreme demigod worship. I'll give an example. Take astrology. When Prabhupada was asked by one devotee, I want to study astrology, Prabhupada said, no, if you do that, you'll depend on the stars and not Krishna. At the same time, Prabhupada would occasionally run charts and talk about charts. So it's not that astrology is necessarily evil. The danger is if astrology becomes our substitute for depending on Krishna, it's very dangerous. I mean, right now, you don't need an astrologer to tell you that things are really weird. No astrologer has to come and tell you that. You can see that. What is astrology? It's like you go to a baseball game. There's a scoreboard that has little lights that tells you who's winning. So similarly, you look up, an astrologer can look up at the night sky and see all the little light bulbs and tell you who's winning. But I don't need an astrologer to tell you that we're losing.
Yeah.
The world's become a very dangerous place.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing because it makes you want to take shelter of Krishna.
Mm.
When everything's going well, we become proud. That's the danger. But I must stop here. I am due to be elsewhere.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Prabhuji, as always. Dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all chant our Krishna Maha Mantra to express our deepest appreciation to our beloved speaker for today, His Grace, BRAHMA-TIRTHA Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us. Please, if you all unmute, Jai. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Panchakapatayasya Vivasatiya Pititanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.
Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glory to Grace BRAHMA-TIRTHA Prabhu Ki Jai. All glory to Jagat Krishna Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glory to Vaishnava devotees. Hare Krishna.
I want to give a message to Gul. Gul, I've mailed your Bhaktivedanta Institute sweatshirt to Leela, so she'll deliver it to you when it comes.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll contact her.
On the way. I want you to know I didn't forget, and it's on the way.
Thank you.
You'll like it. It's really
All right.
nice.
Thank you.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you all.